In this video, you're going to learn how to multiply fractions. There's two easy steps to follow. Step number 1 is multiply straight across. You'll do this with your numerators and your denominators. The second step is when you get your answer, you must simplify it and put it in simplest form. Now, the only problem with this is that you end up working with bigger numbers. So when you simplify in the end, you are dealing with bigger numbers. If you read the hint, it says you can make the multiplying and simplifying easier by a process called cross-canceling. This process helps to eliminate working with bigger numbers. So if you look at the list below, cross-canceling is something that you must do before you actually multiply your numerators and denominators across. It must be done diagonally. It's the same thing as simplifying, but you do it diagonally. You can cross-cancel more than once, and you can cross-cancel in both directions. So if you look above, it does say, or another way to multiply fractions is to one, simplify and then multiply, which is the opposite of what it says here. Okay, let's try a few of these together. Remember, we're going to simplify or cross-cancel and then multiply across to avoid working with larger numbers. Each problem I do in the video, you need to make sure that you do in your notes packet. Let's start with number 1. The first thing I'm going to do is look to see if I can cross-cancel. Again, it must be done diagonally. It's the same thing as simplifying. So I'm looking for a common factor between 3 and 7. There is not a common factor. I look at 2 and 4. I know that 2 is a factor of 2, and I know that 4 has a factor of 2 as well. So I can divide both of these numbers by 2. When I do that, 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. That's how it gets the name cross-cancel. I canceled diagonally. I made 2 and 4 smaller numbers. Now that I've done the cross-canceling, I'm ready to multiply across. So 3 times 1 is 3, and 2 times 7 is 14. I make sure that I cannot simplify my final answer. 3/14 is in simplest form. I'm going to do this problem again, but this time I'm not going to simplify. So 3/4 times 2/7. If I don't cross cancel, I just multiply straight across and I get 6/28. Notice 6/28 is not in simplest form. I have to simplify it at this point. I have to think of a common factor of 6 and 28. I know they're both even numbers, so I can start with 2. 2 is a factor of both. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 28 divided by 2 is 14. You can see I get the same answer. Let's try another one. 5/6 times 8/7. Again, I'm going to choose to cross-cancel if possible. I look at 5 and 7, and I notice there are no factors that they have in common. So I'll look diagonally the other direction. The other direction has 6 and 8. I know they're both even numbers, so they can at least be divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. Again, the purpose of cross-canceling is to make the numbers smaller before you multiply across. So I took the 6 and the 8, and I made them smaller. They're now 3 and 4. I'm ready to multiply across. 5 times 4 is 20, and 3 times 7 is 21. I make sure that 20/21 cannot be simplified again. It is in simplest form. That is my final answer. Let's look at it again without cross-canceling. If I don't cross-cancel, I multiply straight across and I get 40/42. Again, you can see how I'm working with larger numbers this time. I look at 40 over 42, and I know that they're both even numbers. I know that they can be simplified. I can divide them both by 2. 40 divided by 2 is 20, and 42 divided by 2 is 21. Again, I got the same answer. Let's look at example number 3. Make sure you're writing this in your notes packet. 3 over 2 times 3 and 5/6. If you notice, this example has a mixed number in it. When you multiply and divide fractions, we will never work with mixed numbers. We will always turn them into improper fractions. You learned how to do this in a previous video. I'm going to go ahead and use the checkmark method and change 3 and 5/6 into an improper fraction. 3 times 6 is 18, and 18 plus 5 is 23. The denominator stays the same. Now that I have it in the improper fraction form, I'm ready to follow the same steps that I did above. I can multiply straight across, which again, I'm going to be working with larger numbers, or I can see if I can cross cancel before I multiply. I notice that 3 is a factor of 3, and 3 is also a factor of 6. So I'm going to divide both of them by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now I'm ready to multiply across. Before I do, I want to make sure that I can't cross-cancel the other direction as well. 2 is not a factor of 23, so I know I cannot cross-cancel the other direction. So go ahead and multiply across. I get 1 times 23, which is 23, and 2 times 2, which is 4. Now if you notice, this answer is an improper fraction. Our answers must be in simplest form, and an improper fraction is not considered simplest form. So we need to change it back to a mixed number. We'll do that by dividing. Again, you saw this in an earlier video. So I'm going to do 23 divided by 4. 4 times 6, whoops, sorry, that's too big. Let's try that again. 4 times 5 is 20. 23 minus 20 is 3. That becomes my numerator, and that's my denominator. So my final answer is 5 and 3/4. That is a simplified answer. Okay, let's try the last example, number 4. 4/7 times 5. Notice we're working with a whole number this time. Whole numbers can always be written as a fraction by putting it over 1. So we're going to rewrite this as 4/7 times 5 over 1. And we're going to follow the same steps as above. If you notice in this fraction or in this problem, if I look diagonally at 4 and 1, I cannot simplify those or cross cancel them. And 5 and 7, same thing. They do not have any factors in common, so they cannot be simplified. So all I can do is multiply straight across. 4 times 5 is 20, and 7 times 1 is 7. Again, this is an improper fraction, which must be turned into a mixed number, so I will need to divide it. 20 divided by 7, it goes in 2 times, which is 14. I subtract and get 6. 6 is my numerator, the divisor of 7 is my denominator, and that is my final answer, 2 and 6/7. Once you divide and you turn it back into a mixed number, you always need to make sure that that fraction is in simplest form. Because sometimes, once you turn it back into a mixed number, this particular fraction can be simplified. So please double check that, that it can't be simplified any further. Let's look at how to divide fractions. To divide fractions, you really just multiply them. Again, there's 2 easy steps. The first one sounds crazy. It's called same, change, flip. It's a process that you'll follow every time you see division, which changes it to multiplication. Again, that's how we say you really just multiply the fractions. When we say same, change, flip, that means you keep the first number the same, you change your sign from division to multiplication, and you flip the second fraction. The second step is to multiply across and follow the same steps for multiplying that you did in the previous slides. When you flip a fraction, it's called a reciprocal. When you multiply by a reciprocal, you always get the answer of 1. I will show you why you can multiply fractions instead of dividing them during our teacher talk. All right, let's get started. Let's try a few of these together. Again, you are going to do same, change, flip when you see a division of fractions. So for number 1, I'm going to keep the first fraction the same. I'm going to change my sign, and I'm going to flip the second fraction. Instead of 1/5, I'm going to make it 5/1. And now I'm just multiplying like I did in the previous slides. So I look to see if I can cross cancel. I cannot cross cancel in either direction, which means I multiply straight across. 2 times 5 is 10. 6 times 1 is 6. That is an improper fraction, and my fraction must be in simplest form. So if I do 10 divided by 6, it goes in 1 time. I have 4 left. 1 and 4, 6. Remember, I told you that sometimes this fraction can be simplified. 4/6 is not in simplest form. I can divide both of them by 2 and make it 1 and 2/3. That is my final answer. Look at number 2. Again, we're going to do same, change, flip. I'm going to write S, C, F above each of the numbers in the problem. The first one I'm going to keep the same, but if you notice, it's an improper fraction. And I told you in the previous video we cannot work with improper or mixed numbers. We have to turn it to an improper fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and do 3 times 4 is 12 plus 1 is 13. The denominator stays the same. That's the fraction I will keep the same. I'm going to change my sign, and I'm going to flip the second fraction, but it's not a fraction. We know that we have to put whole numbers over 1. So now I can flip 3/1 to 1/3. Now that it's multiplication, I look to see if I can cross cancel. I cannot cross cancel in either direction again, so I go ahead, multiply straight across. 13/12. Again, that is an improper fraction. I need to do 13 divided by 12. Goes in 1 time. I have 1 left. 1 and 1/12. That is my final answer, and 1/12 is in simplest form. Okay, look at number 3. Again, same, change, flip. The first fraction stays the same. The division sign becomes multiplication, and I flip the second fraction. We call that again a reciprocal. I look to see if I can cross cancel, and in this case I can. 2 is a factor of 2, and 2 is a factor of 6. So I know that I can divide both of them by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Again, when you're cross-canceling, you're taking the numbers and making them smaller. You're simplifying them to smaller numbers. Now I'm ready to multiply across. I have 21/2. That as well is improper, so I need to go ahead, divide it to see what the mixed number will be. 2 goes into 21 10 times, which is 20. I have 1 left. My answer is 10.5, and that is in simplest form. Let's try the last example together. Number 4. Again, I have 2 mixed numbers. Both of them need to be turned into improper fractions before I do same, change, flip. The checkmark method takes the first one. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 4 is 24/5. divided by, I'm not doing same change flip yet, so I'm going to go ahead and write it as division. Checkmark method for the second one. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. The denominator stays the same. This is the new division problem written with improper fractions. Now I can do same change flip. The first fraction stays the same, change the sign, and flip the second fraction. Again, I want to cross cancel if possible. That will help me work with smaller numbers. I'm thinking of 24 and 16. The first fact that comes to mind for 16 is 8 times 2. I'm going to look up 24 and see if either of those numbers are factors of 24, and I'm going to pick the highest one, which is 8. 8 makes 16 and 8 makes 24. So I'm going to divide both of them by 8. This is 2. 16 divided by 8 is 2, so I simplified it to 2. And 24 divided by 8 is 3. So I have simplified 24 and 16 down to 3 and 2. Those are much easier numbers to work with. Now I'm ready to multiply across. I get 9. And 5 times 2 is 10. This one happens to be in simplest form. 9/10 is my final answer. Okay, you're going to try these 4 problems on your own. Notice the first 2 are multiplication. You will turn them into improper fractions if you have to. Cross cancel, and then multiply across. Make sure your answers are in simplest form. On number 3 and 4, they are division problems. You will need to use same, change, flip. Again, you will also need to change mixed numbers to improper fractions. I want you to pause the video, do these in your notes packet, and when you're ready for the answer, push play again. The answers will appear. The answer to number 1 is 16/3, which when you simplify or turn into a mixed number is 5 1/3. Number 2, the correct answer is 77/8. When you divide it to turn it into a mixed number, you get 9 5/8. Number 3, this one was division. You needed to do same, change, flip. You get 10/1. Any whole number, or anything over 1 is a whole number. So the answer is just 10. And number 4, 3/1 is your answer. Again, anything over 1 is a whole number, so the answer is 3.